I did want to jump back on here for just a few minutes to talk a little bit more about the story that has completely gripped the NBA this week. And that is the reporting by Meadowlark Media and my former SI colleague, Pablo Torre, that reported and suggested that the Los Angeles Clippers circumvented the NBA salary cap by arranging for a no-show job for Kawhi Leonard that paid Leonard $7 million per year over the last few years. Now, on Thursday, Rachel Nichols and I unpacked a lot of this story, so definitely check that out. But on Thursday night, Clippers owner Steve Ballmer did an interview with ESPN addressing these allegations. Here are some of the highlights.
Up front, I want to say one thing very clearly. We, the Clippers, have abided by the salary cap circumvention rules because that's the right thing to do. Was there an exception made in terms of our relationship with aspiration? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is a company that I got to know, frankly, through them approaching us about a sponsorship deal. My family and I were super keen to do work to stem climate change. We think that's an important thing. I had no control over this company. That is important, actually, under the salary cap rules. I owned less than 3% of the company. There were investors who put in a lot more money than I did. Mm-hmm. I had no board seat. I had no control. Heck, it was a fraudulent company. It's possible nobody had any control.
Okay, so let me say a couple of things about this interview. First, and I said this on Twitter, but it was incredibly weak by Ballmer to do this interview with ESPN. He has had days, maybe even weeks, to defend himself to Pablo Torre and chose not to outside of issuing a couple of paragraph statements. Now that the story is out there and everyone is talking about it, Steve chooses to go on another outlet to respond. So instead of talking to the person who has spent 7 months investigating this, he goes to another reporter who has really only had 24 to 36 hours to fully digest it. Now, I'm not criticizing ESPN here or Ramona Shelburne, who did the interview. Ramona is an excellent reporter, and anyone in the media, myself included, that was offered that interview, they would take it. It's a big interview. What I don't like is Ballmer going to a league partner and sitting down with someone who can't possibly have a full grasp on what is a very complicated story. So this was forum shopping to me. And I think if you really have nothing to hide, you don't do it in this particular way. Now, the Clippers may say they want to do it where it had the biggest reach. I call bullshit on that one. It's not 2005 anymore. That's not how people consume media anymore. I watched the interview on YouTube, and I'd argue that's where 99% of the people who watched it viewed it. Do you reach a few more people that are watching on linear ESPN? Sure. But that interview aired, I think, at like 1 a.m. Eastern time after the U.S. Open semifinals. So take that into account. This isn't a situation where ESPN's reach is dramatically greater than Pablo's. Not with a story like this, which is going to have legs, and a Ballmer interview is going to go nationwide on whatever platform that he does it. Anyway, a lot of what Ballmer said didn't surprise me. I kind of expected it. He said he had no knowledge of the deal between Kawhi Leonard and Aspiration, that he had no contact with Aspiration about the deal. He framed it that he was one of the people that was swindled by Aspiration. He bought in for 3% of the company, had no role in how it operated, yada, yada. Basically that he had no idea any of this was happening between Aspiration and Kawhi Leonard. A lot of that you kind of expected no matter where he did the interview. He did say a couple of things, though, that caught my attention. First, he admitted that the team did make the introduction between Aspiration and Kawhi. Now, That is common practice in the NBA. Teams have sponsors. Sponsors want to be closely associated with the team. Very often, team sponsors do individual deals with players. I've seen people talking on social media about the Spurs and the deal they had with H-E-B, which is a grocery chain down in San Antonio. Several Spurs, including Tim Duncan, did commercials for H-E-B, and they're great. Go watch them on YouTube. So it happens all the time that a team sponsor will also bring in a player on a sponsorship deal. Another thing he said is where Ramona asked him straight out if Kawhi's representatives had asked him for impermissible benefits. Remember, the league investigated this in 2019 after it was reported to them that Kawhi's uncle, Dennis Robertson, had been seeking perks like guaranteed endorsement money. Here is what Steve Ballmer said to that.
They know the rules. They, meaning Kawhi and his representatives, including his uncle. We know the rules. And if anything's not clear, we remind ourselves what the rules are. And we make absolutely clear we're going to abide by those rules. And they understand them as well. And it's important for them to abide by them, which they have.
So not really denying that there was an ask, just that the Clippers never did anything that was against the league rules. It's worth noting here that while Ballmer swore up and down that the Clippers follow the rules, there has been a time when they haven't. In 2015, the Clippers tried to entice DeAndre Jordan to sign with them by offering a third-party endorsement. They were fined $250,000 by the NBA for doing that. So, strictly speaking, they have tried to circumvent the salary cap before. It's also worth noting that in the initial statement, the Clippers said that the idea that they were circumventing the salary cap was provably false. What Ballmer says proves that is the colonoscopy that the organization was given by the government during its investigation of Aspiration. I think the league is going to want more. If you're trying to demonstrate that it's provably false, I think the league's not just going to take the word of, just say like a government investigation is enough. I think they're going to want to see more on that. There was one other thing too. During this interview, Ballmer was asked if he had talked to Kawhi about any of this. This is after he said that he had a great relationship with Kawhi, that he had met with him a couple of times a year. He said no. He also said that he had no reason to talk to him about it, that it was Kawhi's business. What? Like this is a scandal that could potentially cripple the Clippers franchise. Could lead to fines, suspensions, avoided contract, a lot of things this could result in. And it's not something that Ballmer says he's interested in discussing with Kawhi or plans to discuss with Kawhi. That was odd. So Ballmer's position is that he and the Clippers are victims of a scam. Okay. What is still unexplained, and I don't know if we were ever going to get a good answer on this in an interview with ESPN or interview with Pablo or anybody else, but what is still unexplained is, and is really at the heart of this from an NBA perspective, is why Aspiration would sign Kawhi to a deal. Why they would sign him to a deal that paid him $7 million per year to do absolutely nothing. No autograph signings, no commercials, no social media posts. I mean, Aspiration had, I should say, a roster of high-profile endorsers. Robert Downey Jr., he did a commercial, Leonardo DiCaprio, people who were paid money and provided a service of some sort. Kawhi did not. He was reportedly paid $7 million per year, and there is some new reporting from the Boston Sports Journal, which Pablo Torre stamped with his own reporting, that it could be worth more than that, upwards of $20 million perhaps more in stock. And there is no record of him ever doing anything for Aspiration. Why would Aspiration do that? Putting aside the money, which is a staggering figure and one that comes up in my conversations with NBA executives and ownership sources all the time since this story first broke. It's really a staggering amount of money. Is Kawhi Leonard a good pitchman? Is Kawhi Leonard someone that you want to be front-facing or involved at a high level with your company? I mean, what in his history suggests he would fit in a crowd like Downey and DiCaprio? Like, if it was like LeBron, I kind of get that. If it was, I don't even know who else would fit into that mold. Anthony Davis, when he was playing for the Lakers, maybe I get that. You want to get someone like SGA, Giannis, Jokic, kind of get that. But Kawhi Leonard, I mean, not even Jokic. Jokic is probably just as bad a pitchman as Kawhi would be. But it just strikes me as bizarre that they would want Kawhi at that price to be, an endorser of their company. So if the NBA really investigates this, and I do believe that they will, I believe they'll hire an outside law firm and let them look at it. This interview with Ballmer is meaningless. Who I would want to talk to if I were an investigator are the founders of Aspiration. I'd like to talk to Joe Sandberg, who recently pled guilty to fraud. I'd want to talk to the employees that Pablo talked to. I'd want to talk to Kawhi. I'd want to talk to Uncle Dennis. I want to talk to all of them about exactly what went on with this deal. Now, I am curious to see what the reaction is from the other owners. I'm not talking about Mark Cuban. I think Mark has, his own reasons perhaps to be supporting Steve Ballmer. But the Board of Governors meeting is in New York next week. And I'm guessing this is going to come up very early in that meeting. I've seen it suggested that the owners don't want any part of investigation here because that could open them up to a world of legal problems. They don't want to wind up on the wrong side of their own investigation. But I will tell you what ownership sources have told me over the last few days is that they want to know about the money. In 2021, Kawhi signed at the time what was a full max contract. No issue there. In 2024, he took less than the max. Now, the narrative back then was that he did it to help the team. Great. But if he was getting compensated another way, that's a different story because the Clippers are a tax-paying team. An extra few $1 million per year, that gets multiplied in tax penalties and that gets dispersed to other teams. So something I've heard owners asking is how much did this cost them? So we'll see. Ballmer in this interview said largely what I expected him to say. Now it comes down to an NBA investigation, how rigorous that investigation is, and just how much proof the NBA needs to, believe this to be true. Like, they're never going to find a smoking gun. They're never going to find the kind of evidence that existed back in 2000 when the NBA dinged the Timberwolves for what at the time was 5 first-round draft picks. They voided Joe Smith's contract. They suspended Glenn Taylor and Kevin McHale. There was a smoking gun there because there was some legal battle between the agents of Joe Smith. I don't believe you're going to find that here. But how much circumstantial evidence is going to be enough for the NBA to believe that the Clippers did this to avoid or circumvent the salary cap, to get Kawhi Leonard in 2024 at something of a cut rate and get him signed long-term by using an outside endorser? Like, how much evidence does the NBA need? That is going to be the question the league has to ask, and one that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure, for many weeks to come.